What don't we understand yet? So, if this was the Earth, you probably have already heard that the Earth's core is quite hot, about 3,500 to 6,000 degrees. So how is the magnetic field of the Earth actually created? In school we learn there's an iron-nickel core, and this iron-nickel core produces the magnetic field. Can you recap? Do you remember? Do you remember that you learned in school that there's an iron-nickel core which generates the magnetic field? But you also know that if you put a magnet on the stove, the magnetic field disappears, and that there's no material in the world that can uphold a magnetic field above the temperature of 1100 degrees. Did you know? We do not understand the magnetic field of the Earth. Here's the moon. Where's high tide? So here somewhere. Have you ever been to the ocean? How often is there high tide in 24 hours? May you correct yourself? Back here is also high tide, and here's low tide, and there's low tide. But the gravitational force does not explain that back here is also flood. There are people who say the axis of rotation is here, and if so, there is a certain centrifugal force here, but the flood here and there are also the same size. That means we do not understand the double flood. If this is the moon circling around the Earth, you would expect the moon to also circle around itself. You know what the relation of the moon rotation around itself in relation to the rotation speed of the moon around the Earth is? Exactly the same. That means that the moon has only shown us one side for centuries. Pink Floyd has represented it as the dark side of the moon. You know I like Pink Floyd. So we don't understand the dark side of the moon. Do you understand volcanism? So there's a volcano here, and it spits lava at some point. And eventually it goes out. After many years it spits lava again. It awakens. Do you know on which channel the new lava flows? So we think down there everything is full of magma, and that the heat is pressing it towards the surface. So we would always want to have the path of the smallest resistance. But you may know that once a blast furnace cools down, it has to be removed by mining. The trace where the lava has cooled down is one of the hardest materials, which gives it thus the thickest board which one can drill oneself. Only from the pressure aspect the lava would come out the side here. But why does the lava choose the hardest way, the thickest board? Do you understand volcanism? Do you understand lightning and thunder? Do you understand thunderstorms?
Entladung der Atmosphäre.
We learned in school that there are layers of clouds that rub against each other and so create lightning and thunder. In which direction do the lightnings go?
Die Erde hat das höhere Potenzial als die Atmosphäre.
Yes, and why?
Ja, ursprünglich gab es ja mal zwei Beschreibungen. Es gibt so eine elektrische Stromrichtung und eine technische. Die technische ging davon aus, dass die Elektronen, damals wusste man nicht, dass die negativ geladen sind, sozusagen das Plus das höhere Potenzial ist. Ja?
Genau.
Exactly. This is a phenomenological, but not a causal description. I think you want to know how upwards lightning works. Do you know how crude oil is produced? We learned in school that some primeval forests have died or some oceans have dried up. The fish carcasses somehow rooted themselves together, dripped into the deeper layers and under high pressure, somehow changed, and from fish oil became raw oil. Do you know that the oil storage tanks are filling up again? Did you hear about that?
Ja,
Ja.
Ist bekannt, ja.
endlich.
So how is crude oil produced? Do you at least know that the earth is growing? Another question, where does the carbon of the trees come from? You already know that the earth is growing. Do you already know that the earth is growing, that the continents not only in the Atlantic but also in the Pacific perfectly fit together on an earth which is only a third as large as ours? How does the earth grow? Where does the mass come from? Where does the water come from? Do you also want to know why Saturn has several rings? Do you understand that? If I would explain it to you, would it be okay? How long do you have time? Everything is holographic, as above, so below. You know what an atom looks like, and that an atom looks similar to our solar system. Our Earth can look similar to our solar system according to the self-similarity principle, or look like an atom only a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller than a solar system. Just an idea after proper, speculation and refutation. So my idea, the Earth would be such an atom. So it has a shell or mantle and an atomic nucleus. Just an idea, just a hypothesis. You know, you first have to develop a hypothesis in order to then disprove it. So imagine the Earth would look like an atom, with an extremely dense but large atomic nucleus. So if the Earth had an atomic nucleus where 80% of the mass is in the nucleus, then this atomic nucleus will have the diameter of 500 meters. If it were as dense as an atom. Now the hypothesis. You know that out there in the universe there are those neutrinos. Heard of them before? And such a neutrino has the energy or mass equivalent of thousands of neutrons, protons, and electrons. So the idea is simply neutrinos, which normally pass through everything, slow down because the core is so extremely dense, and thereby materialize as proton, neutron, electron. The electrons naturally want to enter the electron shell. The electron shell of the Earth would, for example, be the ionosphere. So now they would flash out of here and then penetrate this mantle. Do you know what happens when electrons pass through solid matter? If electrons were to pass through the Earth, what would happen? And what would happen then? And if it would warm up more and more, it would melt. When the Earth melts, what happens then with the conductivity? It increases. So the thesis would be that electrons come out of here, and what we call lava veins are really electron flow veins. My thesis is thus that volcanism is not caused by magma under pressure, which then penetrates to the outside, but that the Earth heats up through the electron flow and the electrons squeeze out of here with lightning activity. It's just a blatant thesis. I'm known for those. But now you can simply disprove it. Because if that was the case, volcanism would always be combined with lightning activity. You would know that. So I did a little research, and I found a little something here that volcanism does have something to do with lightning activity. And I have found it again, and again, and again.
Und nochmal. Das ist alles Photoshopping von mir. Und dann habe ich es nochmal gefunden. Und nochmal. 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 Und nochmal.
That's called volcanism. I have tried to refute my thesis and did not succeed for the time being. If water were to seep in the earth here now, what would actually be seeping into the earth? CO2 is heavier than air, so it falls down. Do you know that a bottle of fizzy water contains a lot of CO2? So at 10 meters, we have what kind of pressure or overpressure? Yes, for example, a 10-meter water column. 1 bar. At 100 meters, how much? 1,000 meters. At 10,000 meters. Okay, so let's say we have about 500 bar. Can you imagine that the water solubility increases a lot if under 500 bar pressure? Do you know how hot such a lava vein is? About 2,000 degrees. So if you have 2,000 degrees, and let's say 500 bar, you have H2O and you have CO2. Do you know what that reacts to? Yes, this is the reverse reaction to the combustion reaction in the engine. It produces oil. C12H26 dodecane plus oxygen. Now we balance it out. Here we need 12 CO2. And there we need 13 H2O.
13 H2O. 13 H2O. Dann haben wir 6,5.
So we get 18.5 O2. And now the principle of Le Chatelier applies in chemistry, that a reaction under pressure is always oriented in the direction of the smallest pressure. So we have 13 plus 12, which means we have 25 volume units. Here we have 18.5 plus 1, so we have 19.5 volume units. That means at high pressure, the reaction goes in this direction. This means that at a high pressure, the reaction CO2 plus water goes in exactly the other direction, as in the internal combustion engine in the car. Now you also understand why they want to extract the CO2 from the coal-fired power plants and press it back into the earth. Because if they press the CO2 back into the earth, they produce more crude oil. So for that, they demand tax, press it into the earth, and thus are able to then sell the crude oil that is produced by this process back to us at a high price. But they keep telling us all the time that crude oil is limited. Quite ingenious business model. A model to cash out twice. Audi has applied for a patent on it, and every chemist who knows a bit about high-pressure chemistry knows that under high pressure, water and CO2 react to crude oil and oxygen. And now you also know where the oxygen comes from. So let's move on. Now you will also understand more about gravitation. You could imagine if the neutrinos are absorbed here, this naturally happens in a certain frequency.
Das heißt, wir haben hier
That means we have a gravitational wave, and here we have the ether that we have already talked about. This gravitational wave reflects at the ether to a standing wave, and there where you have the minimum of the wave is where the gravitational zero point is.
Ja, da hast du den Gravitationsnullpunkt.
That means that we on the outside are pulled by this gravitational wave
sind durch diese
here to the gravitational zero point in the Earth's mantle.
Nullpunkt im Erdmantel gezogen.
And on the inner side, we are pulled exactly in the other direction.
Sind durch diese Gravitationswelle genau in die andere Richtung gezogen.
And this, of course, is an inner sun that shines 24 hours a day.
Stunden scheint. Ja, jetzt kommt hier Sauerstoff raus und dann ist klar, dass es hier auf der Innenseite des Erdmantels und der Erdmantel ist
The mantle is 1,000 kilometers thick, and the center of gravity from the inside 300 kilometers and from the outside 700 kilometers deep.
Der ist von der Innenseite 300 Kilometer und von der Außenseite eben 700 Kilometer.
And the Earth is not only hollow, but it's open at the poles, so it is a toroid.
Einfach so eine Schale, so ein Mantel, sondern ist natürlich an den Polen offen. Das ist ein Toroid. Ihr seht hier,
Here you can see very nicely how the Earth is tearing apart in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Das Ding auseinanderreißt. Das heißt,
the reef here is right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and you can see it tearing apart by the big mountain chains.
Wir sehen hier an den Gebirgsketten die Bewegung, wie es auseinanderreißt. Ja?
And you can see the same in the Pacific Ocean.
In den alten Karten
In the old maps, these underwater mountains, or reefs, even have names. But these are removed in the new cards because in that moment it will easily be revealed that they are just trying to trick us. Before the First World War, there was a lot of literature about it, also here in Germany. That is all very nicely mapped. And at the propagation of seismic waves, you can also read the thickness of the coat well.
Also, dass die Polen offen sind, vielleicht auch dazu nochmal. Also, alle Planeten sind.
Furthermore, I wanted to add that the poles are open, all planets are open, and the northern lights have something to do with the inner sun or with the neutrino irradiation because it goes mainly through the poles.
Hauptsächlich über die Pole.
You can imagine a toroid looks like this. So the Earth looks more or less like an apple. The Earth is the true Big Apple.
Nochmal, also die Erde ist eben ein Toroid.
Yes, this is the forbidden fruit. I just gave you the forbidden fruit.
Ich habe euch eben den verbotenen Apfel gegeben.
But it's the quality of time where you can't keep these things secret anymore. You see, we are being scientifically fooled in a hardly believable and unimaginable kind of way.
Glaubhaften Art und Weise, in einer für uns normalerweise unvorstellbaren Art und Weise.
These things are quite logical. How is the Earth's magnetic field created? This giant atomic nucleus is the center of the Earth. And of course it's a supermagnet. And of course it's cold. Double flood. The Earth is an atom and the Moon is an atom. What are both together? A molecule. And they are connected to each other per molecule orbital. It looks something like this. So the Moon is coupled to the rotation of the Earth like on a rod. And then you understand why here and there is high tide, which has nothing to do with the moon, but with the orbital alignment of the inner core of the Earth, the inner sun. Earth and moon are a molecule. Now you understand the double flood, you understand the dark side of the moon, you understand volcanism and what it has to do with electricity. You understand upwards lightning, you understand how raw oil is created, which in partially oxidized form the trees consume. That is what they really live on. They absorb it naturally with the water. Why the complicated photosynthesis? So where does the carbon of the trees come from? How does the earth grow? Through neutrino radiation. Where does the mass come from? Where does the H2O come from? The civilization in inner earth calls the inner sun the smoking god, because the light atoms or molecules like H2O or nitrogen gas out of it.
H2O oder Stickstoff gasen da raus.
So where does the H2O come from is clear. And why does Saturn have rings? Here we have a gravitational zero point and here we have a gravitational zero point. Here are the satellites, and this works because of the standing wave, which is reflected by the ether. Because of this, there are gravitational zero points here and there and there. And that's why Saturn has rings. This is how simple science could be if you would just open your eyes.